President Emmanuel Macron says France will withdraw its troops from Mali.
Could a government minister steal $25 million from its citizens? Shockingly, it has happened in Nigeria. Recovered from over 50 bank accounts, this staggering sum unveils a troubling reality. While the economic impact may be quantifiable, the political fallout is immeasurable. Confidence in the government falters, leaving Nigerians questioning the integrity of their leaders. Is this an isolated incident or a symptom of systemic corruption? Are we to celebrate the exposure of one corrupt official or lament the presence of such individuals in positions of power? Let's find out. Corruption has long been a scourge on Nigeria's path to development, undermining trust in government institutions and diverting resources from those most in need. Recently, the nation was rocked by revelations of alleged corruption involving the Nigerian Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Betta Edu. Just a few months ago, the minister made headlines for reportedly transferring over $600,000 to her personal account, funds intended for vulnerable members of society. However, an ongoing investigation has unveiled a far more staggering truth. Funds totaling $24 million traced to more than 50 bank accounts associated with the minister. This shocking revelation underscores the deep-rooted nature of corruption within Nigeria's government and the urgent need for decisive action to combat it. In today's video, we delve into the implications of this unprecedented case on Nigeria's anti-corruption efforts and socio-economic development. From the systemic issues highlighted by this scandal to the challenges ahead in restoring public trust, we analyze the complexities of Nigeria's battle against corruption and offer insights into the path forward for the nation. So, what's the background of corruption in a nation like Niger? Corruption in Nigeria is a multifaceted and deeply ingrained problem that has plagued the country for decades. Rooted in historical and systemic issues, corruption permeates various levels of government and society, undermining efforts to promote transparency, accountability, and good governance. Since gaining independence in 1960, Nigeria has struggled with corruption. The discovery of vast oil reserves in the late 20th century fueled a culture of corruption and rent-seeking behavior among political elites, who sought to exploit the country's natural resources for personal gain. The mismanagement of oil revenues, coupled with a lack of transparency and oversight, exacerbated socio-economic inequalities and perpetuated a cycle of poverty for millions of Nigerians. Despite successive governments' efforts to tackle corruption, progress has been slow and uneven. Various anti-corruption initiatives, including establishing anti-corruption agencies such as the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) and the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offenses Commission (ICPC), have been launched over the years. However, these efforts have often been hampered by political interference, inadequate funding, and a lack of political will to prosecute high-ranking officials implicated in corrupt practices. The Nigerian Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation case is just one example of the pervasive nature of corruption within Nigeria's government. Allegations of embezzlement and misuse of public funds highlight the challenges facing Nigeria's anti-corruption efforts and the need for comprehensive reforms to address systemic issues. Moreover, corruption in Nigeria extends beyond the public sector, permeating various aspects of daily life. Corruption affects Nigerians' access to basic healthcare, education, and justice, from bribery and extortion to nepotism and patronage. The prevalence of corruption undermines trust in government institutions and erodes public confidence in the rule of law, perpetuating a cycle of impunity and reinforcing social inequalities. Despite these challenges, Nigeria has made some progress in the fight against corruption. President Muhammadu Buhari's administration has prioritized anti-corruption efforts, implementing measures such as the Treasury Single Account (TSA) system to centralize government funds and enhance transparency. Additionally, high-profile prosecutions of corrupt officials, including former governors and ministers, have strongly conveyed that impunity will not be tolerated. However, much work remains to be done to tackle the root causes of corruption and foster a culture of integrity and accountability in Nigeria. Strengthening anti-corruption institutions, enhancing transparency and oversight mechanisms, and promoting civic engagement and public participation are essential steps in combating corruption and promoting sustainable development. But what does the recent case highlight? The recent revelations surrounding the Nigerian Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation have brought corruption within Nigeria's government to light. A few months ago, the minister was scrutinized for allegedly transferring over $600,000 to her account, funds intended for humanitarian purposes. However, an investigation into a single transaction has since evolved into a sprawling probe, uncovering a web of financial impropriety. The initial allegations against the minister sparked public outrage and demands for accountability. Already disillusioned by years of corruption scandals, Nigerians were dismayed that funds meant to alleviate poverty and support vulnerable communities were allegedly diverted for personal gain. The minister, for her part, vehemently denied any wrongdoing, claiming that the funds were used effectively to fulfill her duties and responsibilities. However, as the investigation progressed, investigators uncovered a series of suspicious transactions and financial irregularities linked to the minister. A pattern of behavior indicative of systemic corruption emerged, with funds traced to more than 50 bank accounts associated with the minister. The total amount discovered, a staggering $24 million, far exceeded the initial allegations and underscored the scale of the corruption allegations. The sheer magnitude of the funds involved in this case is deeply troubling, particularly in a country where millions of people live below the poverty line and rely on government assistance for necessities. Misappropriating such significant sums undermines Nigeria's development efforts, erodes public trust in government institutions, and exacerbates social inequalities. Moreover, how the funds were allegedly dispersed, scattered across multiple personal bank accounts, raises serious questions about transparency and accountability within Nigeria's government. It suggests a deliberate effort to conceal the extent of the minister's financial dealings and circumvent established oversight mechanisms. Such behavior violates ethical and legal standards and undermines the integrity of Nigeria's governance structures. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. The unfolding case of the Nigerian Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation highlights the challenges facing Nigeria's anti-corruption efforts. Despite the government's commitment to combating corruption, entrenched interests and systemic weaknesses impede progress. The ability of high-ranking officials to allegedly siphon off millions of dollars underscores the need for comprehensive reforms to strengthen accountability mechanisms and foster a culture of integrity in Nigerian governance. Furthermore, the case highlights the importance of robust investigative journalism and civil society activism in holding government officials accountable. Without the tireless efforts of journalists and activists to uncover corruption and expose wrongdoing, many misconduct cases may go unnoticed or unpunished. The public outcry and demand for accountability surrounding this case demonstrate the power of grassroots movements to effect change and uphold democratic values. While the reality of this case is exposed, what impact does this case overall make? The revelations surrounding the Nigerian Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation have sent shockwaves throughout the country, prompting soul-searching and calls for accountability. As Nigerians grapple with the implications of the alleged corruption scandal, it is essential to assess its impact on Nigeria's anti-corruption drive and socio-economic development. First and foremost, the discovery of $24 million traced to the minister's bank accounts underscores the depth of corruption within Nigeria's government. Despite years of anti-corruption initiatives and pledges by successive administrations to combat graft, endemic corruption continues to undermine Nigeria's development efforts. The ability of high-ranking officials to allegedly embezzle such vast sums of money highlights the challenges facing Nigeria's anti-corruption institutions and the urgent need for comprehensive reforms. Moreover, the alleged misappropriation of funds for poverty alleviation and humanitarian purposes is particularly egregious. Nigeria is home to millions of impoverished people, with many struggling to access necessities such as food, clean water, and healthcare. The diversion of funds meant to support these vulnerable communities represents a betrayal of public trust and a violation of the government's duty to serve its citizens. The case also raises questions about the effectiveness of existing oversight mechanisms and the role of political will in combating corruption. Despite establishing anti-corruption agencies and enacting anti-corruption laws, corruption remains pervasive in Nigeria, with few high-profile convictions of corrupt officials. The lack of accountability for corrupt practices erodes public confidence in the rule of law and perpetuates a culture of impunity among Nigeria's political elite. Furthermore, the case has broader implications for Nigeria's reputation and international standing. Corruption has long been a stain on Nigeria's image, deterring foreign investment and undermining efforts to attract skilled professionals and foster economic growth. The discovery of such substantial sums of money allegedly embezzled by a high-ranking government official only reinforces negative perceptions of Nigeria as a corrupt and unstable environment for business and investment. However, amidst the despair and disillusionment, there is also room for hope and resilience. The public outcry and demands for accountability surrounding this case demonstrate the Nigerian people's commitment to fighting corruption and holding their leaders accountable. Grassroots movements, civil society organizations, and investigative journalists play a crucial role in exposing corruption and advocating for transparency and accountability in governance. Nigeria must seize this opportunity to enact meaningful reforms and strengthen its anti-corruption institutions. This requires political will, leadership, and a commitment to upholding the rule of law. It also necessitates greater transparency, oversight, and public participation in government processes. By rooting out corruption and promoting good governance, Nigeria can unlock its full potential and create a brighter future for all its citizens. And what international response has this case gathered? The alleged corruption scandal involving the Nigerian Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation has reverberated beyond Nigeria's borders, raising concerns about the country's commitment to combating corruption and promoting good governance. The international community has been closely monitoring developments, with implications for Nigeria's relations with foreign partners and the broader fight against corruption worldwide. Nigeria's reputation as a country plagued by corruption is at the heart of the matter. Despite efforts to promote transparency and accountability, Nigeria continues to grapple with endemic corruption, undermining its credibility and standing on the global stage. Foreign investors, donors, and development partners are wary of engaging with countries perceived as corrupt, fearing that their investments and assistance will be misappropriated or undermined by graft. The alleged diversion of $24 million by a high-ranking government official only reinforces negative perceptions of Nigeria as a corrupt and unstable environment for business and investment. It underscores the need for Nigeria to redouble its efforts to combat corruption, strengthen its anti-corruption institutions, and promote good governance to restore its international reputation and attract foreign investment. Moreover, the case has implications for Nigeria's relations with foreign partners, particularly those providing development assistance and humanitarian aid. Donor countries and international organizations increasingly scrutinize how their funds are utilized and demand greater transparency and accountability from recipient countries. The alleged misappropriation of funds intended for poverty, alleviation, and humanitarian purposes raises questions about Nigeria's commitment to using aid effectively and efficiently to address the needs of its citizens. In response to the allegations, foreign governments and international organizations may reassess their engagement with Nigeria and impose sanctions or withhold assistance until credible investigations are conducted and accountability measures are implemented. This could seriously affect Nigeria's development prospects and ability to address pressing socio-economic challenges. However, international cooperation and support can contribute to Nigeria's efforts to combat corruption. Foreign governments and international organizations can provide technical assistance, training, and capacity-building support to strengthen Nigeria's anti-corruption institutions and promote good governance. Nigeria can leverage external expertise and resources to enhance its anti-corruption efforts and improve government transparency and accountability by working with the international community. Furthermore, the case of the Nigerian Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation serves as a cautionary tale for other countries facing similar challenges. Corruption is a global phenomenon that transcends borders and affects countries at all levels of development. The case highlights the importance of international cooperation in combating corruption and promoting good governance worldwide. What lesson can be learned from this, and what changes can be made to avoid this in the future? The alleged corruption scandal involving the Nigerian Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation underscores the urgent need for comprehensive reforms to combat corruption and promote good governance in Nigeria. As the country grapples with the fallout from this scandal, it is crucial to chart a course toward a more transparent, accountable, and prosperous future. First and foremost, Nigeria must prioritize strengthening its anti-corruption institutions and legal frameworks. While progress has been made in establishing anti-corruption agencies and enacting anti-corruption laws, enforcement remains weak, and political interference often undermines accountability efforts. Nigeria must invest in building the capacity of its anti-corruption agencies, enhancing their independence, and providing adequate resources to carry out their mandates effectively. Additionally, Nigeria must address the systemic issues that fuel corruption within its government and society. This includes improving transparency and accountability in public procurement processes, strengthening oversight mechanisms, and promoting a culture of integrity and ethics in government institutions. Political will and leadership are essential in driving these reforms forward and holding corrupt officials accountable for their actions. Furthermore, Nigeria must prioritize investments in poverty alleviation programs and social services to address the root causes of corruption. Poverty and inequality create fertile ground for corruption to thrive, as individuals may resort to corrupt practices to meet their basic needs. By investing in education, healthcare, and social safety nets, Nigeria can reduce the vulnerability of its citizens to corruption and promote inclusive growth and development. Moreover, Nigeria must enhance transparency and accountability in managing public funds and resources. Implementing measures such as the Treasury Single Account TSA system and open budgeting initiatives can help improve fiscal transparency and prevent the diversion of public funds for personal gain. Nigeria must also strengthen its financial regulatory framework to prevent money laundering and illicit financial flows. In addition to domestic reforms, Nigeria must engage with the international community to strengthen its anti-corruption efforts. Foreign governments, international organizations, and civil society groups can provide technical assistance, training, and support to enhance Nigeria's capacity to combat corruption and promote good governance. Collaboration and information sharing are essential in addressing cross-border corruption and recovering assets stolen through corrupt practices. Ultimately, the fight against corruption requires the collective efforts of government, civil society, the private sector, and citizens. Nigeria must foster a culture of transparency, integrity, and accountability at all levels of society, empowering citizens to hold their leaders accountable and demand greater transparency in government decision-making. By working together towards these common goals, Nigeria can overcome the scourge of corruption and build a more prosperous and equitable society for all its citizens. The alleged corruption scandal surrounding the Nigerian Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation serves as a wake-up call for Nigeria and the international community. It highlights the pervasive nature of corruption within Nigeria's government and the urgent need for comprehensive reforms to combat this scourge effectively. At its core, corruption undermines the fabric of society, eroding trust in government institutions, perpetuating inequality, and impeding economic development. The misappropriation of public funds meant for poverty alleviation and humanitarian purposes represents a betrayal of the Nigerian people and a violation of their fundamental rights. However, amidst the despair and disillusionment, there is also room for hope and optimism. The outcry and demands for accountability surrounding this case demonstrate the Nigerian people's resilience and determination to fight corruption and hold their leaders accountable. Grassroots movements, civil society organizations, and independent media play a crucial role in exposing corruption and advocating for transparency and accountability in governance. Nigeria must seize this opportunity to enact meaningful reforms and strengthen its anti-corruption institutions. This requires political will, leadership, and a commitment to upholding the rule of law. Nigeria must invest in building the capacity of its anti-corruption agencies, enhancing transparency and accountability mechanisms, and promoting a culture of integrity and ethics in government and society. Ultimately, the fight against corruption requires the collective efforts of government, civil society, the private sector, and citizens. Nigeria must foster a culture of transparency, integrity, and accountability at all levels of society, empowering citizens to hold their leaders accountable and demand greater transparency in government decision-making. In the end, what flaw does this case highlight for African leaders? The case surrounding the Nigerian Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation highlights a concerning trend among some African leaders, prioritizing self-interest over the public good. One key flaw this case highlighted is the pervasive culture of self-enrichment among political leaders in African nations. Instead of serving the interests of the people they are elected to represent, some leaders prioritize their wealth and power, often at the expense of their citizens' well-being. This focus on self-interest manifests in various ways, including embezzlement of public funds, nepotism, and favoritism in government appointments and contracts. Rather than investing in essential services such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure, some leaders channel public resources into their personal bank accounts or use them to benefit their family members and associates. Moreover, pursuing self-interest often leads to disregarding the rule of law and democratic principles. To maintain their grip on power and protect their interests, political leaders may manipulate electoral processes, suppress dissent, and undermine the independence of institutions such as the judiciary and the media. The consequences of this focus on self-interest are dire for African nations and their citizens. Corruption and mismanagement of resources hinder economic development, exacerbate inequality, and undermine trust in government institutions. Millions of people across the continent continue to live in poverty, deprived of basic services and opportunities for socio-economic advancement, while their leaders amass wealth and power. Addressing this fundamental flaw requires a concerted effort to promote ethical leadership, transparency, and accountability in African nations. Leaders must be accountable for their actions and prioritize the public interest over their gain. Civil society, the media, and international partners are crucial in advocating for good governance and demanding greater transparency and accountability from political leaders. Ultimately, overcoming the focus on self-interest in African leadership requires building strong institutions, upholding the rule of law, and fostering a culture of integrity and ethical conduct. Only then can African nations realize their full potential and achieve sustainable development for all their citizens. Do you think African leaders need to think like actual leaders? Should people like these be allowed to be government officials? In the comment section, let us know how a filter can be created to prevent such ministers from becoming ministers. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.